Have you ever had a board state where you have some value ETB creatures in play? Maybe one that discovers something, and then you can blink them. But you also gave all your spells Cascade, so when you blink your cards, they discover you into other blink cards and you're cascading into more value. And then you hit a Jeska's Will, so you cascade into more blinks, which draws more cards. And then you get even more ETB value, and when you think it's almost over, you spin into a regrowth to recast the Jeska's Will again. And now it's been like 20 minutes. You have like 30 random rectangles on board, and it feels like you're winning, but nobody's losing because you already attacked. And you don't run any combos, so I guess you just passed the turn? So you spent all that time and didn't win. And then what's even worse is someone cast an Ondu inversion, so it's all gone. Was that turn too long? Did you waste everyone's time? How can you avoid making players wait around for nothing? Or are you on the other side of the table, always watching someone else pop off? I'll answer all of these and more. But first, if you like my videos, consider subscribing and checking out the Patreon. Thanks. There are many ways a turn can go long. I'll break them down here and show you how to combat them. First, let's take a look at the actual rules. When playing the game, you need to be progressing the game state. More things on board, drawing cards, gaining life, causing players to lose life, something like that. You can't hold up a game with Basalt Monolith and tap and untap it forever. Slow play or stalling like that is just not allowed. Another reason a turn might take a long time is because of someone taking the time to read all the cards. And I want to clarify that that is totally fine. Magic is not a game of speed. Anyone can at any time pause the game and read any card available for them to see. For new players, I have no issues with them pausing to read what's going on. It's really important to allow newer players the time that they need to get acquainted with the game. Magic's really convoluted, and EDH is one of the most convoluted formats. So that's just going to require some patience. And if you're a new player, feel free to call over a judge to clarify any rules question you might have. Most game stores will have a judge hanging around to help. And part of this is on us enfranchised players to not rush a new player. Yeah, we can throw the Scalding Tarn in the graveyard and grab a Triome, but the new player might have never seen a fetch land before and won't know what's going on. You don't need to explain every minute detail, but slow down a little bit. And honestly, this is a very small issue. I've never seen a player actually get upset because a new player wanted to read a card. Actually, a lot of players are happy when their weird cards get read by other players. At least I'm happy when I cast a weird bauble and the table hasn't seen it before. And over time as a new player, you'll get better at Magic and not need to read as many cards. Another niche way to speed up your gameplay is to shortcut things. For example, if you're going to crack a fetch land and then follow up with a Demonic Tutor, you can often tell the table, hey, I'm gonna shuffle again, here's my Demonic Tutor, I'm just gonna grab both things at once. Now, if you're doing this into open blue mana, maybe you're gonna wanna take things one at a time, but oftentimes this can speed up the game since it's less likely that someone's gonna counter the tutor and they would rather counter the spell you actually cast anyway. There are many cards that take a long time to resolve and can be shortcutted as well. Things like Mind's Desire, for example. Technically, if your storm count was 6, this would require you to shuffle, flip a card, and then shuffle again and flip another card, and do that every single time. But most people allow you to shortcut to shuffling once and flipping the top 6 cards or whatever, since it's basically the same result. Just make sure the table knows what you're doing when you shortcut anything. But let's go back to the original example. Let's say you're playing a deck and you're just popping off. Nobody used removal on your value pieces, you drew into all your best synergy, and the mana you need to cast it. How long should your turn take? Sometimes players can get upset or salty when you take a lot of game actions. But for me, a player taking a long turn because their deck is popping off is not something I have an issue with. Here's something to keep in mind. Even though you might be doing nothing, for your opponent, their deck is doing the thing. This is a hype moment for them. Every loss for you is a win for someone else. Every time your opponent draws the perfect top deck at the right moment, it's a story that they're going to tell their friends about later. And I want to be clear, this isn't a Shen bike situation. I'm still trying to win, and I'm going to use removal to stop people from popping off, or try and knock them out before they can get their engines online. But I also understand that I will not win every game, and that's okay. It's casual Commander, right? Nothing's on the line. So that's it. just be okay with people taking long turns? I hear you asking. Well, no. I do think that it is important to be in the right mindset when playing casual commander. Hey, this person's going off, that's cool, their deck is doing the thing, we're having fun here collectively. But there are some actionable things you can do to mitigate long turns. If your play group is upset at you because you're taking very long turns, one way to speed it up is gold fishing. The act of playing your deck against nobody. Take out your mat, draw a hand, and play lands and cast spells and see where your deck goes. Many deck building sites will have a playtest feature that you can use for this. You see, when your deck pops off and takes the longest turns, it's usually when everything goes right and nobody removes your stuff. So gold fishing will help you learn the best game actions to take when things go right, because when you play against nobody, there's no removal coming at you. This way you get more practice in going through the motions and it'll take less time in a real game. But what about the other way? One player is always popping off, their deck is taking insane turns, and you just sit there and watch. The answer here is playing more removal. I see a lot of online discussion about power imbalances, or this deck is always going crazy and popping off, and many players lament about how one deck is unbeatable once they have these 6 cards in play. But they always seem to forget, any of these could be removed before all 6 come into play. Yeah, I'm sure that deck is strong when they have their commander in play and all their best value engines and protection to back it up. But there's a point in the game when they don't have all of those things. Against some decks, you need to take preventative measures. And having instant speed interaction not only helps in stopping people from going off, but when you have removal in hand, it means you're no longer just sitting around waiting for other players to do their thing. You have to pay attention to the board state and see where you can most optimally cast your removal to snipe a key piece and make their value engine fall apart. Sometimes they'll only have one of a certain effect in play, like one sacrifice outlet, and then once that's gone, the whole thing falls apart. And if one player is always using their commander to generate the insane value early game and pop off, then maybe you should start by removing their commander or whatever value piece they have. Part of this is just going to be threat assessment, which takes some time to learn. Here's a quick example. What's the bigger threat? A rampaging Baloths or a Greater Good? The Baloths can attack you and actually do damage, unlike Greater Good, but it takes time to deal the damage and can be countered by simply having bigger creatures on board, or a board wipe, which many players will have in their deck. But Greater Good can make it so every threat your opponent plays can be turned into more cards in hand as soon as you try to remove them. And if they keep drawing more and more cards, then eventually they will have more threats than you have answers. Try to focus on players' value engines, not just the things that actually deal damage. I also want to address extra turns, the Narset problem, if you will. This commander is relatively infamous for essentially taking very long turns or many turns in a row. If you don't know Narset, she's a 6-mana 3/2 with First Strike and Hexproof. But whenever she attacks, you get to flip the top 4 cards of your deck and cast all the non-creature spells for free. So if you fill your deck with extra turns, extra combats, you can essentially continually attack with your commander over and over and over again, and either take a very, very long turn or take many, many turns. And this card is notoriously hated or salt-inducing, all sorts of things like that. But it's by no means unbeatable. Narset needs to survive for these effects to go off. So the decks usually play additional ways to give her indestructible, or unblockable, or other things to actually continually attack. Because otherwise, she just gets stopped by a 4/4. And Narset, or just other extra turn spells, all these other setups require multiple pieces. It's never just, oh, I cast Narset and I win. There are other things at play here. Truth be told, extra turns can be thought of in the very same way as the value pile example from earlier. Very few people actually cast their 5-mana extra turn spell on turn 5 just to draw 1 card and ramp a land. And if they do, that's not a huge issue because that turn ends really fast. People seem to get salty when there's like a mnemonic deluge on a time stretch and someone's taking 8 turns in a row. But the secret here is player removal. Just knock the player out before they have 10 plus mana to do all of these crazy things. All of these things takes a lot of setup and mana. And if they're not dedicating mana early game to putting stuff on the board, and instead they're just ramping and drawing cards, punish them for not playing anything on board. Attack them. Get other players on your side. Hey, this person's going to pop off with Narset as soon as they can cast it, because they have a haste enabler in play. Let's focus them down. And most of the time, the rest of the players understand the threat and will go after the Narset player. Taking 10 turns in a row doesn't happen without shenanigans. Also, as a side note, if they do Mnemonic Deluge the time stretch, you don't need to play out all the turns. If someone's taking 8 or more turns in a row, you can just scoop. The game's essentially over, it's basically a combo at that point. Like I said earlier, there's nothing on the line. There isn't a point to waiting for that 1 in a million chance that they just draw basic lands for the rest of the game. They're probably gonna cast a board wipe, and then creatures, and then attack for the next 6 turns, and you'll be dead. So there you have it. If you are taking really long turns, try Gold Fishing more to practice your deck and speed up. Also, see where you can shortcut in your gameplay to make your turns even shorter. Or if you're on the other side, play some more removal so you're not just sitting around waiting for other players to win. And be a little bit more cautious about which players you attack first. Going all in on the Simic value pile is perfectly fair. Hopefully this advice helps you in your future games. And let me know if you have any other solutions or ideas about the topic in the comments below. Thank you so very much for watching, subscribe for more, and check out the Patreon.